daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Liverpool podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. Another week, another crazy few games in the Premier League and now the Champions League. We had that last-minute winner against Burnley in the Premier League at the weekend. And then on Wednesday night, we get another last-gasp winner, this time against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. I was there last night. Obviously, this is at the time of recording. This is Thursday. Hence the kind of sore throat, hoarse voice, and lack of sleep, courtesy of Great British Roads, which most of them were closed on the way back from Anfield. So got in at about 2 a.m. last night. So yeah, a little bit worse for wear, but still buzzing really after that Virgil van Dijk winner, which I've got to say, anyone that was at the stadium, we could all sense it was coming, and this is what it does. These kind of last minute goals. Look, I hear all the haters and opposition fans talking about how lucky we are, how the referees are giving us everything, Liverpool. But the reality is that great teams, champions, that's what they do. This is what the Liverpool team of the 70s and the 80s did on a regular basis. This is what the Manchester United team of the 80s and the 2000s did, the early 2000s. I mean, they called it Fergie time. That's the regularity with which stoppage time goals were going in at Old Trafford. And, that's why these teams, that's why they were champions, because they never give up. They always believe that they're going to get something out of the game. And, they'll just keep going because they've done it so many times before. And I think what makes that belief a reality, at least partly, is the effect that has on the opposition as well, because they know it too. They know that we're up against a team that constantly gets these last minute goals, and so they start sitting a bit deeper. They will get desperate. They start panicking in defence because ultimately they know what's coming. And look, from our point of view, while it's a great quality to have, that belief, that resilience, to keep going, to keep pushing forward, to not give up and to not buckle under the pressure, I think sooner or later you're going to get caught out. And it's great when you get these last minute goals, but it just takes one game where, you were 2-0 up and you've let that lead slip, and then you don't get a last minute winner, and then it becomes a bit of an issue. But look, I've said it before in this podcast a few times. I think that we're almost inviting this problem. And for me, I think the biggest thing, at least I think the only criticism really that you could level at this team and Arne Slot is the slow tempo of the game at certain parts, because I think we just slow it down too much, maybe trying to kill the game, maybe trying to take the sting out of the game at 2-0. But I think that at 2-0 you keep going, because the best way to kill a game is by scoring another goal instead of trying to control or contain or slow the tempo down and then if you concede, all of a sudden, the opposition have got their tails up, and if they can get one back, they can get another back, and so they're the team that's on the front foot, and we've seen that a few times already this season. But ultimately, look, we got the job done. It's 3 points in what will be a really, really tough Champions League campaign. I'm not sure we're winning 7 out of 8 like we did last season. Just the next game, I think up next is Galatasaray away, which is never an easy place to go. And, they've made some good signings, Galatasaray. I think they've got Victor Osimhen on a permanent transfer. They've brought in Leroy Sané. They've brought in Gundogan, I think, as well. So some really good players in that team. And when you factor in just the hostility of that stadium on European nights, it's got to be one of the toughest places to go in terms of atmosphere, which is fantastic. That's where you want to watch. That's why we love European football. But not an easy list of fixtures in this Champions League this season for us. But this weekend, the attention obviously turns back to the Premier League, and it's a big one. In fact, I think it's a big weekend in the Premier League. Apart from us going head-to-head with local rivals, Everton, Manchester City are going to Arsenal for the Sunday kickoff. And, that could be a significant game in what is the kind of very early part of the title race. Obviously, we're top on 12 points. Arsenal are in second on 9 points. And then Manchester City are down in 8th on 7 points. So they're just 2 points behind Arsenal. They're 5 points behind us. And so I think this is it's a really big game for both of those teams, because you've got Arsenal who, they've got to be looking at this season. I mean, we've said this for a few seasons now, and it's going to remain that way until they do get over the line. And it's these kinds of games where I think most of the criticism that's been leveled at Mikel Arteta, it's these kinds of games where he's kind of fallen short. So he went to Anfield, he took his Arsenal team to Anfield and really put in, for me, what was I thought a really just a terrible performance. A terrible performance tactically from the manager, terrible team selection, and just the way that the team performed just told you that this is a team that is playing with fear of losing, as opposed to, being confident about going out and winning a game. And as I said, these are the games that Arsenal have been criticised for not really going for. I remember Gary Neville said last season when Arsenal, they got a 2-2 draw, I think it was, at the Etihad, and they were really happy with that point. And Gary Neville, I thought, made a really good point, saying that you need to win those games, not just because of the points that you take and the 3 points that you take off one of your title rivals, but it's the mentality, the psychology that is affected in those kinds of games. It affects your opposition's mentality and psychology, the team that you've just beaten, obviously, because they've lost a game against their title rivals, but it also sends out a signal to other title rivals that, we're in this to win it. And they just haven't been able to do that. And so I think this is going to be a big game for Arteta, because I think if they don't win this game, they could be 5 points behind And that's obviously provided we win first. And that's the other kind of very interesting factor about some of these fixtures in the Premier League is the timing. So our kickoff is on Saturday. It's an early kickoff. And so, if we do win that game, then we can already pull, I think, is it 6 points clear of Arsenal. 6 points clear of Arsenal before the Sunday game. And so the pressure will be on both teams, to get a positive result, because a draw would mean Liverpool being 5 points ahead of Arsenal and 7 points ahead of Manchester City with just 5 games played. And so that would be great for us. But I think both teams have got a huge incentive to go out and get a positive result rather than play for a draw. So could be a very significant weekend in the Premier League. But we will look ahead to the Everton game right after this very short break. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, so Liverpool welcome local rivals Everton to Anfield for the first Merseyside derby of the season. It's an early kickoff in the UK, Saturday 12:30 p.m, and it's an even earlier start for our friends in the States at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So we go into this game top of the league after just 4 games, maximum points with 4 wins from those 4 games. But it is a derby game, and so I guess we do have to revert to cliche and say that the form book goes out of the window when it comes to derby games. And I suppose it does in some sense, but only if we allow that to happen. So I think the onus is completely on Liverpool to go out and win this game, because quite simply we have the better team, we have a better set of players in every position. We've got a better goalkeeper, the defence is better, the midfield is much better, the forward players are much better. So the onus is on us to dictate the game and to dictate the outcome. Everton will come to Anfield off the back of a goalless draw at home to Aston Villa, and they've accumulated 7 points from their opening 4 Premier League games: 2 wins, a loss, and a draw. And they've scored 5 goals, they've conceded 3, and a goal difference of +2. So it's a decent start for David Moyes, Everton manager. Everton lie in 6th in the Premier League table, so I think he's made a good start, and I think he's really shaping this Everton team in his image now. Obviously, he was Everton manager for such a long time in his first stint, and they are now, starting to show signs of being a much more stable and well-organised team, which, that's what you expect from a David Moyes team. They are in a new stadium now. They've got players like Jack Grealish, who's come in and has already made a really positive start. So I think Everton are a team that will do, I think, a lot better than they have done in recent seasons. I don't think you're looking at a team that will be in a relegation fight like they've been in recent seasons. That said, look, we know what Everton will come with. They will want to stifle Liverpool and not allow them to build any kind of rhythm in their play. And, I said a few weeks ago that the Newcastle game, because of their kind of long ball tactics, that was a good practice for the Arsenal game. And that was a good practice for the Burnley game. And that's going to be good practice for the Everton game, because Everton will do what all of those teams try to do, which is really just to stop us from playing football, which is fine, but they won't play football either. They will use set pieces. They will use long goal kicks from Jordan Pickford, and they will waste time. They will use every trick in the book to make this an ugly contest. And you know what? That's fine. It's up to us to break these teams down. But I think this is why maybe we haven't been at our most scintillating best when it comes to the football that we're playing, because, it's with the best will in the world, it's difficult to play really great football when the opposition has 2 banks of 5 in their own half and show absolutely no ambition in going forward. And we're used to that. We're getting more and more used to that. And look, we'll just have to get on with it and deal with whatever it is that Everton are going to bring. I just hope that the referee does his job. Some of the tackles that our players have suffered in this fixture over the years I think has been really shocking. The tackles have been shocking, but also the decisions have been even worse. I mean, Alexis McAllister alone he'll probably play with an extra large pair of shin pads after last season's horror tackle by James Tarkowski. But look, Maka is Argentinian. He'll be fine, tough as nails. And the reason I bring up the refereeing is because it's fine having these terrible tackles, but they're not punished. It'll just be yellow card. So I'm hoping that the referee is going to be strong. Jack Grealish, I've already mentioned. I think he's had a really good start to life at Everton, and just from a football perspective, I'm pleased for him, because I just thought he was wasted at Man City, and I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, given what he won at Man City, but you've got to remember he left Aston Villa as one of the best naturally gifted players in the country, and Pep just turned him into this tactical, sideways passing, boring machine where any of the kind of ingenuity, the spontaneity and creativity that ironically made Man City spend £100 million to get him, it was just kind of completely beaten out of him. And the other irony is that he goes to Everton under a manager that is regarded as a very conservative and pragmatic manager, and he's flourishing. I think Moyes, he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And he's clearly said to him, look, we've got players that will do the hard yards and they will do the graft. And yes, you've got to work hard, but we want you to hurt the opposition. And you hurt them by not passing sideways, but by getting forward and passing forwards. And that's why he's got 4 assists in the opening 4 games of the season. So he'll be one to watch. And Liverpool hopefully, I think, dominate enough possession to maybe nullify Grealish's threat. And after that Champions League game midweek against Atletico, I think team selection is going to be a big talking point. Alexander Isak made his debut, and an impressive one as well. And, surprisingly, I mean, he started and then he came out for the second half as well. I thought he'd just do 45 minutes. So he got a good kind of 60 minutes under his belt. And so I'm not sure that he'll start this one, maybe another 20, 30 minutes coming on as a sub, obviously depending on what the game conditions are. But in terms of, look, he's kind of strike partner or the one that he'll be rotating with, Hugo Ekitike, already has become a fan favourite. What a signing. what a signing and what a prospect he is. He came on against Atletico, and he was just this big, imposing figure that just, I thought he terrorised that Madrid back line. And I think maybe a derby game against Everton, I think he'll be up for this and really will thrive in that kind of atmosphere. So let's go into a predicted lineup. We'll skip past our goalkeeper Alisson as we do most weeks, because he is the number one. And it's really, I guess, again, in those fullback positions where most of the debate is gonna focus, because Konate is going to partner Van Dijk. Konate, I think he's safe to say, has kind of played his way back into proper form now. And, you see that kind of triangle of kind of Alisson and then Konate and Van Dijk looking, really kind of solid now. So there's no doubts in terms of my mind that obviously Alisson, Konate and Van Dijk start. And then it's the fullback positions. And I'm going to go for Frimpong, because I think, one, he's back fit. He's, he played against Atletico, and I think his pace is going to be really important, because we're going to have to try and get around the sides of a very low block, and you just know that Mohamed Salah is going to be double marked, maybe even triple marked, and so we're going to have to try and match Everton on those flanks. And so I think it becomes even more important that someone like Frimpong is in the team to give an alternative to Salah out on those flanks. So I'm going to go for Frimpong at right back. And even though he started on Wednesday night against Atletico Madrid, I'm gonna go for Andy Robertson at left back. I think that he's been excellent this season, and it's really, really good to see him. I don't want to say back to his best, because he didn't really have a huge dip. I think a lot of the criticism last season was very unfair, but he did suffer an injury, and he came back and he wasn't really quite right. This season, I think, one, he is back to full fitness, but he's got serious competition in Milos Kerkez. Tsimikas has left the club, and so that competition was not as stiff when Kostas was there, and so I think that's a good thing. And I think you see that now in Robertson's performances as well, that he knows he's got that his place is not guaranteed, and so you've seen a really, really good Andy Robertson starting this season. And I think that with this fixture, it's going to be, obviously it's a Merseyside derby, it's going to be blood and thunder. And I think one of the things that Kerkez has probably got to improve upon is his temperament in terms of the tackles that he flies into. And there's been a couple of games already where he's been booked, and very early on, and he had to be subbed against Burnley, and you just can't afford that in a derby game. You've got to keep your head, and for that reason, I think Andy Robertson would be a really good selection, because his experience, he's played in so many of these big games, these Merseyside derbies. And so that's not going to phase him, but at the same time, he's got that fire as well, where he'll get stuck in, but he'll know not to cross the line. So I think that he's our starter. Well, I'd like to see him start anyway. And then we go into midfield, and there we've got another question, because if we have our kind of traditional fullbacks playing, that means Szoboszlai has to go into midfield. I don't think you can start a game without him, and particularly in a game like this where you're going to need a lot of legs and a lot of energy. It's going to be very physical. So I'm going to go for Gravenberch, McAllister and Szoboszlai, which means that up front, one of Gakpo or Wirtz might have to drop out. And it also calls into question the kind of shape that we might play. And I'm thinking that he either goes for Salah, and I think he'll start with Ekitike and Gakpo. But then you leave Florian Wirtz out unless he goes for a 4-man midfield. A similar kind of formation to how he played against Manchester City at the Etihad last season. We had kind of 2 number 10s to kind of overload that midfield. It's an interesting question because it is going to be quite congested, and so really the thing that would make most sense is to create more width. But I just think that the only way that you get Wirtz into that team is to play him in midfield as one of 2 number 10s. So that I think is another question mark in terms of how that midfield shapes up. There could also be a case that McAllister doesn't start because he is also finding his way back into kind of match fitness. And if McAllister doesn't start, then I think it kind of reverts to a more kind of orthodox Arne Slot team or a formation at least, where Szoboszlai will then go into the midfield, create that double pivot with Gravenberch, who again was absolutely outstanding on Wednesday night. I just can't think of a better number 6 in European football at the moment. So it could be Gravenberch and Szoboszlai, in which case Wirtz then keeps his position in that kind of number 10 role. And then I think it will be Salah, Ekitike and Gakpo, with Alexander Isak to come on as a sub. So I think that would be our kind of predicted lineup. In terms of a predicted score, I've been absolutely terrible this season with my score predictions, but I'm going to say 2-0. I've got to go for a home win. We are better than Everton, but we've just got to be really switched on. And I just want to see us play with a tempo that just doesn't allow for the opposition to come back into the game, as we've done so many times, being 2-0 up, and then we just allow the team to come back into the game. So hopefully a good tempo, an aggressive tempo, and one that just really kills off any chance that Everton can make a comeback. So we'll see what happens. That is all for today. You've been listening to the Daily Liverpool podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. We'll be back straight after that Everton game on Saturday to give you an immediate post-match reaction. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.